Hi everyone, welcome to Spirit Coffee Talk. This week on the show we have some great topics that we tackled. We talked about the two sides of polarity really at play on the planet in a lot of different ways and how really they're just trying to be heard. And so we talked about what that looks like. We also talked about the absolute powerhouses that we are as human beings because we have emotion. And that was something that was brought down from Spirit, so we're excited to share our amazingness about the emotional beings that we are with you guys, and also ways in which we can express our emotions in ways that are constructive and help us move forward. So I hope you guys enjoy the show. Okay, and welcome everyone to Spirit Coffee Talk. I am Jeanette Byro, and we have Lisa Richmond with us today. And I say us because normally we would have Elise Catherine as well, but she's away today. So Lisa and I are going to run the show. We are mediums and channelers from Avalon Spirit. And basically what we do is we sit and we chat. We have coffee with Spirit and chat amongst ourselves about what's been going on in the last little bit in the energies, and share with you guys any insights we can get of understanding what's been going on, because there's been a lot going on the last while. And I would say even especially from the eclipse and the new moon we had on June 10th, I think since then there has been a lot of like forward, backward, sideways, forward, backward movement universally and energetically. And I don't know about you, Lisa, but I have been like, what is going on?
Yeah, it's been a bit crazy for sure. I think every day is something different for sure. Gosh, it's been emotional. I think that has been the biggest one for me is how emotional it's been. Probably it's been a very up and down, like you said, back and forth. And now the sun's coming out, and I feel like everybody is at a state, like even approaching summer solstice.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like, at least the energy around me is that everybody's ready for a break. Like
Mm-hmm.
school's finishing up, the sun's coming out, and I think it's just time to just tuck away the schedule a little bit. And that's how I feel. Like I'm ready to go have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
Ready to go play and have some fun.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and I was thinking too, okay, December 21st, 2020, we shifted into a new timeline. And I had the feeling that there would be more ease, although there would be lots revealed. I just felt for some reason we would flow better than what I think we have in the first half of the year. Because again, the solstice marks halfway point in the year. And I think this year has been a lot about like surfacing things which create stops and starts and changes and reroutings and all of that kind of stuff. And so I agree with you in saying that like it's time for a break and for schedules to chill and just to be in the sun, because I think for me, I'm at a point where I don't know what else to do besides do that. Because trying to figure it out, trying to understand all of the pieces is not working. That makes sense. It's not working.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. On a deeper level.
Yeah. I remember when I went to Mexico a couple of years ago and studied with a beautiful woman, just kind of the way of the goddess and yoga specifically for women, and how to like really sink into the way of the woman, essentially. And one thing that we talked about heavily was just going with the flow of the seasons, and as well as the moon cycles, but the seasons. And so one thing that has always resonated with me was when winter solstice, that was a time to like really come in, almost like a new moon, right? That would be the time to kind of come in. What are our intentions that we want to set? What are the seeds that we want to put out there? Like really writing out what we're ready to release and putting out what we really want. And it's like the time of like deep inner knowing and manifestation. and this is like energetically as well. And then the summer solstice or the full moon energy is one of like dancing under the moonlight, dancing in the sunshine. And it is the time to relish and embrace what you have around you. It's like the party. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
the fertile, fun, gratefulness for what's around you, the feminine flow of things, and the celebration of what all is. It's the longest day of the year, the celebration of light. And so I think it happens to fall this year on Father's Day, and so it's maybe tying into the energy of togetherness, and even if it's a father or not father, it's just that togetherness piece, and in finding time to be outside and be grateful for what you have, even if you're going through a really tough time or things aren't really adding up. I just feel like the energy of this weekend specifically is one of lightness, celebration, right? So I know I need that right now. So yeah, maybe putting away some of the to-do lists, or even just for a little bit, and take time to just celebrate and play and
Yeah.
dance. Or if that feels a little outside of the box, is just allow yourself to embrace the right now and look around at what you've created and thinking, I did this, I created this, I've done this with anything, and taking that piece and maybe embracing that. That's my intention, I think, for this weekend.
I think that's a great idea. And that makes a lot of sense too, because again, we have the ability to always take charge of the perspective we're choosing to live in. And I almost say that through gritted teeth, because sometimes it's like, I don't want to change my perspective because it's not
Totally.
fair or this or that. But we always have that aspect of control. And, I think as the world is moving through all the different things, and the summer is going to be a point of a lot of changes and surfacing still. So we're still in that theme of surfacing and changing and, shifting. We really can focus so much on how we're going to perceive it and how we're going to honor the self and take time to step back and simplify and come back to what we can control. Because I know for me, for example, if I tune into spirit and I get insights, I'm like, okay, this makes sense and this is good, and okay, I understand and I feel in alignment, and we're going to have a time of pause and whatever they say. If I then right away go back upstairs and I check the news, I check this, I get thrown right back into the crazy energies of all the things going on, and I fall out of an alignment of peace. And so I think there's so much value of choosing what we do, whether we want to stay focused in the chaos, or if we want to choose to put the chaos away and stay focused in peace and control of what we can do, again,
Exactly.
based on our perspective.
It's exhausting.
It is.
Right? Going back and forth and back and forth. We're finding ourselves absolutely exhausted. Right? And you had talked about this earlier in the week about how, you can really feel the pull of the energy and how it can be really exhausting, especially for light workers and just empaths or people who are connected to kind of all the feels.
Yeah.
And I think everybody feels this to an extent, whether it's with work or family or spirit or anything, right? And I think there's always, okay, so this week I've been definitely confronted with energies of polarities. And I know we've talked about this in the past, but when you say being in control of what you can control and being in your alignment, and then all of a sudden it's almost like you get sideswiped by simply even turning on the TV or engaging in a public conversation online or something like that. I got absolutely sideswiped this week by some grotesque polarities. And I say that because I truly, hanging out in the vibration that we hang out in on a regular basis with my family, with you, with spirit, and my, my personal existence and how I've created my existence to be. Sometimes we forget that there is large polarity still. and there still is hate, and there still is, hurt and anger and pain and suffering, and there is. And I don't think there'll ever not be, because, there has to be light and dark.
Yeah.
But when you pull yourself through that, and all of a sudden it feels a bit like a sucker punch when you're not expecting it.
Yeah.
And it has been emotionally exhausting to pull myself back into exactly what you said, almost like pulling myself out of that yucky chaos, where I was so stunned that I was like involved in it. I was like, how can you be saying this? How can and I was trying to hold a higher vibration within the conversation, and it didn't work. You can't fix it in it. So like pulling myself back out, dusting it off, it was draining, it was humbling, it was emotional. But I don't know, for anybody who's feeling that, even when they're like really working at mental health right now because of the seclusion or because of whatever it is that's triggering and emotional and all of it that's going on, I really I resonate with it, and I send a ton of compassion. But like, hang in there, try to pull yourself out of it a bit so that you can look from a perspective above, like away, just even pulling away from it a bit, so you can give yourself space from that chaos a bit. Does this make sense?
Oh, it totally does, because it reminds me of what you told me this week. So for those watching, I had texted Lisa this week at one point, and I was frustrated because I was trying to communicate something to somebody, and you're like, Jeanette, remember that you live in a different mind space than other people. And it doesn't mean one is better than the other, but it just means that your mind space, the level of frequency or whatever you want to call it, is different. And it doesn't mean you have to change yours. You just change the way you speak to the person, because you have to meet them where they're at. And I think that's one of the biggest things, like for you in your situation, the polarities, like to keep smashing your head against a brick wall that's not going to come down.
Yeah.
There isn't a point. But to show people like, hey, there's a brick wall there, I would avoid that section because it's not going anywhere. Go around, that kind of thing. And maybe it's not avoidance, but it's like awareness for people to choose. If someone wants to run their head into it, go for it.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, obviously. But
yeah. But like you can't be, like frustrated by watching the people do it over and over and over, expecting change. And it's like I said, both sides. It's like one side of the brick wall and the other side of the brick wall, boom, 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 but nothing's changing. It's just creating more division.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's so common though. That's happening in so many levels though.
It is.
Like we're seeing that in family dynamics. We're seeing that and I'm going to cautiously say pro and anti-vax. I'm not jumping on either side. I'm just saying a lot of pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, conspiracy, not conspiracy. Instead of meeting in the middle, people are fighting so hard to prove their point, right? Like they just want to be heard, and they just want to be heard, but they want to be heard, but they want to be heard. But that's like, if you bring it down to any simple argument that we've all been in, when we're only arguing to be heard and not stopping to hear the other side, which then allows them to stop to hear our side, and then we co-create and collaborate.
Totally.
That's where it changes. But when we're just like,
right. And I think that's what we were talking about, is that when we choose our alignment, I think you and I consciously try our best to choose from the frame of like observing and understanding sides, and then holding ourselves to the highest frequency that we can within our control. But I mean, we're human. Every now and again, we get pulled right back in, and we see it and we can feel it. And it's like when you pull yourself back out, it's like, oh, that was a lot.
Yeah.
But
what's interesting about that though, and I was talking with the guides this morning actually about that, is the value of us being humans with emotion. And I was kind of like, well, what do you mean by that? And we are actually these amazingly powerful creators and destroyers based on the intensity that emotion can add to anything. And it's something we haven't consciously tapped into. And maybe some people have. Because fear is a really big control factor, right? People can control fear. Parents can control their kids with fear. Don't do that. You will You will break this.
Fear has been the number one form of control in any organization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so when we take the emotional capacity that human beings have, and a lot of light beings talk about this, how, they in one way admire the emotional abilities of humans, but they also are like, oh my gosh, it would be exhausting because they don't feel emotion the same way. But what we're missing as human beings is tapping into our absolute power of what our emotions can create. So if we take an energy of change and we add emotion to that, it amplifies it to this much bigger. We have to consciously choose which emotion we're adding, because we're either going to light a fire that destroys an entire forest, or we're going to light a fire that clears a field, renews its resources, and then can be replanted, right? We can create a burn that is beneficial or a burn that destroys based on our emotions. Our emotions are the gasoline to energy.
Wow.
And we need to really recognize that. But I'm not saying this from standing on a podium that I have it all figured out, because as humans, we are deeply triggered. And we're deeply
Yes.
triggered by wounding, by events, by ancestral patterns and histories. There's lots of ways we trigger.
Yeah.
And that's why it always has to come down to what I often try to remember with myself and teach my kids is a pause. Practicing a pause before responding sometimes gives you enough time to question, am I doing this because I want to be heard? Or am I doing this because I have a valid point and I've considered their side? And that pause gives a moment to be like, or do I need more time to walk it off and come around to another, state of mind? And so if we add that, then we can really use our emotional capacities as humans to create a good burn, right?
Yeah, it's almost like understanding your emotions and using your emotions for the greater good. But it's like emotions mixed with a good dose of thought and intellect. Like the pause gathers it instead of it
Mm-hmm.
just being, like you said, an emotional reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that's been a huge thing for me. And I've been, ridiculed like crazy my whole life for being so emotional,
Mm-hmm.
right? For being so, and I understand that there's a lot of times, maybe my whole thing about feeling like, a trigger about not being seen and heard, right? And so the emotions behind that, when I don't feel seen or heard, bringing it forward, and yes, that's gotten me burnt before, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that learning to take a pause, but knowing that emotions, I'm going to even say this, it might not be everybody's story, but emotional content or emotional availability or communication, specifically for a woman in something, I feel like in my personal experience, I've had to be really aware, because if I want to be taken seriously, it can't be too emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know? Like, and I think we're trying to like really move out of that, and like where you and I reside on a regular basis, that's not a thing as much, but it certainly is a thing where it's like, oh, just, emotional woman again kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a big trigger for me, is allowing myself to be okay with having an emotional reaction to something,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
or an
yeah.
emotional, having that as fuel.
Yeah. Because when we add the emotions of like love and joy to something, we can create so much more bounty in our lives. But unless we're willing to feel the emotions of fear and triggers and really feel them and then choose, we're going to miss out. So, like, and I say this from my own personal experience. I was really emotional growing up, right? And then I tried to become very kind of non emotional and more controlled for many years. But what I did is I actually closed off my experience of deep joy because I didn't want to experience the deep sorrow or frustration or anger or whatever.
Totally.
And so we have to be able to, or what I learned for me was I had to be able to take those fences down to both. And that was really raw, because I was like, well, now it feels like I'm just standing here naked, right?
So
But
exposed.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then when I realized, it's like, no, you're actually standing there exposed so that you can, again, take that moment to step back even further and then look at which direction do you want to go. Because there are times where emotion is going to help in maybe what we would consider a negative or something, but that might help you stand up for yourself.
Totally.
So
That
what,
part of you needs to be heard too.
yeah,
Because
right?
if
Like,
we continue to suppress that part of self, it
mhm,
turns to rage.
yeah,
It turns to resentment and like a crumbling of
yeah,
communication.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
we can have quote unquote negative emotions
mhm,
and be able to express them,
yeah,
and it's actually completely healthy. But that's a relatively new concept, I would say,
mhm, yeah,
about your, I don't know, I say it to my kids sometimes. It's funny that you can teach it to kids, but then it's like, oh, I really have to practice that as well.
mhm,
When I say emotions are like colors, there's not one that's better than the other. They just simply are. So
mhm,
happy, sad, scared, whatever. It's
mhm.
like yellow, green, red, blue. They
I love
just
that.
are. They just
Yeah.
are. And so if you're feeling an emotion, rawness, and especially as a kid, because it just kind of happens, right? It
Mhm,
comes up. And if I continue to say, don't cry, come on, don't cry, pull it together, or you did so good because you're so happy. That makes mom so happy. Everything you do makes mom so happy, right?
mhm,
And then, or other things being like that is mad. Like, then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you say it's like colors,
mhm.
but that's not entirely true, is it?
Yeah,
These emotions are good,
yeah,
and these emotions are not tolerated,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
And then builds the I don't know, suppression, and then it turns into all the muck that they have to deal with in their 20s,
Mhm,
30s.
yeah, right? And undo.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
I'd be foolish to think that they're not going to have to do it anyway at some point. That's
yeah.
fine.
Oh, for sure.
But I think that that's a good point, and that's something that I obviously really needed to hear today too, because
Mhm,
I think that's important, embracing all emotions.
mhm. And really feeling them. I mean, there's so much value, and it was interesting too because when they said that, I was like, oh, that's interesting because they really, like Spirit, really looked at it as this really untapped power. It was
Mm.
like, do you not realize? It was like, no, I completely didn't. I completely missed the boat on that. And then when they explained
Mhm.
it, like, this is how it is, I was like, wow. So then, like, what can we add our emotions to? And I think right now, for me personally, it's adding that emotion of like love and gratitude, like you're saying, and perspective of compassion to things,
Mhm.
right? So like when things are
Mhm.
going down for certain people and maybe
Oh,
not
that
for
feels
you,
really
it's like,
warm.
yeah, right?
It does.
It's like adding that to the energy. And I think too, when we think of the energy that's happening right now, which has just been shifting so much and changing, taking that same choice of do you want to go into emotional overwhelm where you're going to be snappy and irritated and whatnot, or do you want to take the pause and then go back into choosing which emotions help you moving forward? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Okay, be overwhelmed. What's going to help you change that? Well, going
Mm.
in the garden and playing music. Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
okay. And then you don't override it and ignore it. You
No.
validate it. You're saying, I'm overwhelmed with stress energy and I'm getting emotional about it. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to sift through it, chew on it while I go in the garden and I add energies that bring me back to where I want to be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I think maybe even taking a pause and looking at it and saying, why am I feeling so frustrated, or so like I feel like it's all bottled up? It's the suppression, and you're feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it needs to just be felt, and be like, okay, I feel it. Yeah. And then like, what are the things? What are the tools you can do to like feel it, and like let your entire body feel it and let it flow through you?
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned a wicked technique from a master teacher, Christine Hassler. She's amazing. Doing the temper tantrum technique.
Oh.
And so what we did, and the one rule of it is that you can't reflect it back on yourself. Like, I'm so stupid, or I'm so dumb, or I'm so like, I can't believe I did that. It's, I'm sick of not being heard. I feel so frustrated. I just want to be heard, like whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can you get a bunch of pillows and you put it in front of yourself and
Mm-hmm.
sit on your bed, close your door, people gone,
Mm-hmm.
and just whack, whack, whack. Like, it doesn't have to be like hard, but like the sides of your fist, or like get a little pool noodle and like cut it so there's just, and so that it makes that whoop sound,
Yeah.
but it's not like a baseball bat, right? It's just
Yeah,
like
right.
bum, bum, bum. And it's
Yeah.
like really therapeutic to hear the sound. Anyway, you just go and go and go and go, and like you can cry or not, and just like let it go until literally you're like, I'm done. And then
Mhm.
you just ways you have some water and like totally just let it flow through you. Give yourself a little bit of like nurturance after, because that's a lot.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then take a sec and pause and then to move forward. But it's like then, the stress hormones and the adrenaline and stuff that is being produced in your body isn't being overproduced and then taken up again. And then,
Mhm.
so then it like it settles in your system, and your
Yeah.
nervous system gets affected, your whole cellular, your body,
Mhm.
right? And like you could go into the science of it, but really we don't as humans actually release our stresses enough through
Mm,
physical release,
that's true.
right?
Yeah.
And so we get this surge of stress hormones, we get this surge of adrenaline, and then we leave it, and then we suppress it, and then our
Mhm.
body absorbs all of that again
Mhm.
into our cells.
Mhm.
We get sick. We get
Yeah,
sad.
right.
And
Yeah.
and so this is like, even not if like the temper tantrum works great, but even like little things, if you can have a sec to go stomp up and down the stairs.
Mhm.
Like kids that
Yeah.
stomp their feet, it's actually a natural way to release the stresses. And
Mm.
like, I mean, obviously it's a trigger for a lot of people. It'll be like, don't
Yeah.
you stomp your feet, right?
Yeah.
But it's really good for them. If your
Yeah.
kids are stomping away from you, be like, okay, that's good. They're releasing their stress.
Mm. Mhm.
Seriously. So if you stomp your feet up and down the stairs, go down and up and down and up and stomp it, it really helps actually release all the
Yeah.
stuff out of your body.
That's great.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And you can make that into a thing too, right? Like especially with kids and stuff, if they're really feeling it and that, it's like, let's go outside and let's stomp as hard as we can, or. But in terms of, I was thinking of this for adults. There was something that Spirit told me to do one time, and it was very challenging because it was so raw with myself. And what it was is they're like, for me in that case, because in many times, like if we go back to these polarities, we just want to be heard,
Hmm.
right? We just want to be heard. And then in that case, they're like, Jeanette, you're wanting really for you to hear you. Because they're like, we hear you. And what most matters is that you feel heard, but who's going to be the one that can really show you you're heard is you. And I was like,
Hmm.
what? You know? And they said, set up your camera on video and
Ooh.
record it and lose it on camera and explain all of the things that you're upset about, how you feel, whichever words, whichever whatever, if you need to throw your arms around, whatever, or the temper tantrum thing, like you're saying, do it. And then when you've gotten it all out and you take a moment, then if you're willing, watch it. And I remember being like, oh my God, right? But the most magical thing was when I turned around and I watched it and I watched the amount of, say, anger or hurt or frustration that needed to come out.
Hmm.
I had so much compassion for myself in a way that
Hmm.
normally I would have judged it. I would have been like, oh gosh, what are you doing? Or, you could do better. And this is when I was really trying to like come to terms with my emotions. And I was able to watch it and be like, I hear you.
Mm.
Like, oh, I hear your heart. And it was almost like my higher self or something validated me for me. And I realized there was no better validator for me than me. But I needed an opportunity to be able to see the amount of frustration I was feeling from a place of calm and then say, I hear you. And I remember that day, I felt like I let go of like tons of energy, like it just washed right out of me. And I almost felt almost a little empty because so much came out and then was validated that I was just like, whoa, almost in a state of like mild shock for like a day or so. But
I
then I
bet.
had so much space in this clear canvas to like start painting again,
Yeah.
start building again. It was really powerful, but it's about being willing to witness yourself. And so some people
Mm.
will do that and talk into the mirror, and that's really
Mhm.
big, right? Actually look in their own eyes. So
Mhm.
that's one way to do it. But I found it even more for me personally profound in letting it all out, calming myself down, and then having a willingness to watch.
and
my
listen.
expression. And
Because then you
yeah.
get the feeling of you got to say it and you got to get it all out,
Yeah.
which is one. But
Mhm.
then the validator of actually having it received and somebody listening,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so naturally, we usually put this onto other people, like our partners or whatever, with this
Yeah.
expectation that they're going to receive it in the way we want them to, which is unrealistic in
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
Really, the only person that can meet that need of actually listening and absorbing it is us.
Mhm. Mhm.
What a gift. That's
Right? Isn't it
really
crazy?
cool.
I know. I know. I'm so glad we're talking about this today, and it kind of led to this.
Yeah.
Because it really brings back that remembrance of personal power,
Hmm.
right? And like our true ability as creators or destroyers, depending on what we put our energy to. And
Totally.
like we can foster relationships with self and others, or we can destroy relationships with self and others.
Hmm.
Depends on where we're putting our energy.
Totally.
Yeah. Wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's true. And I mean, I
Mm.
really like encourage anybody who's listening too is if we do, like, if we are feeling a sense of overwhelm and like where you're like, I'm just like right there, stop, pause, and say, ask ourselves, where am I putting my energy without judgment? Because the last thing we need is to judge ourselves on it either,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But just acknowledgement, being like, okay, no, I am putting I full on acknowledge the fact that I'm putting my energy into the chaos,
Mhm.
into the fear, into the like the deep depths of these polarities, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to consciously acknowledge this, pause, take a step out, and
And
decide
choose.
what I need.
Yeah. And sometimes too, I think it's important to say that like sometimes we'll make the decision and go a certain direction, and then that's not going anywhere. And then we have to like realign again and pause
Totally.
again and do it. Like we don't, I think there's so much pressure for a lot of people, in the world today to have things figured out or to mend quickly or get over something quickly
Yeah.
or to do it the right way the first time. And I
Hmm.
think we need to take the pressure off that to be like, we need to figure it out as
Totally.
we go. Like healing is always this way. And whether it's a long healing or a short healing, like it's not always just linear. And sometimes we can understand what we need in our brain, but our heart is still needing something else.
Totally.
And so it's like honoring
And
that.
a good way to communicate that with the people that you love around you, because I know that there can often be this expectation from people around us that if we're helping people or we're doing stuff within our work, right? But then we're doing stuff with ourselves, be like, well, what's wrong? Like I thought we went through this. Like I thought, like why are we still hung up on this? Like, are you still upset?
Mm-hmm.
Or like, are you mad at me? Like, what's going on? And I think that articulating this is important too. Saying like, you know what, I am doing some healing or I am working through this emotional stuff. And it's actually still raw or it's still new. And I'm not sure how long it's going to take. And I'm not even sure the process of it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing this 1 minute at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have to hold some space for me while I continue to go through this.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm just going to be as open and vulnerable as I can about this, but I can't give you any
Mm-hmm.
answers. You're just going to have to roll with it. And you are invited to do the same thing for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because like if we can, what is someone going to say to that? Like,
Yeah.
no,
No.
no.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
true. It's true. I love that. What a beautiful reminder and discovery. This is why I like doing Spirit Coffee Talk
I
because it's
love
like
Spirit
this
Coffee Talk for this.
beautiful
We have no idea what we're going
collaboration.
to talk about.
I
Yeah.
know. It's so good. It's
It is
so
good.
good. Yeah. Well,
You can just sit down and visit for a bit too. I love it.
I know. It's true. It's
Hmm.
true. Well, do you have any other kind of closing thoughts for today?
Hmm. Have fun. Have a fun weekend.
Yeah.
Like just try to take in the natural things around you and just know that no matter where you are, there's always more or less, right? Where you are. But like try to, I think the big thing is give yourself some credit. When you look around, be like, I've created
Mm-hmm.
so much, and acknowledge the creations, whether it's the plants around you or your children or your jobs or your books or your house or your whatever it might be. You know, I've created so much around me and I'm worthiness of like all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Worthy,
Mm-hmm.
worthy, right? It's a
Yeah,
birthright. It's our birthright to be worthy of everything
I
in
love it.
abundance. So,
I love it. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, well, yeah, I'm really glad we did this. And thank you
yes,
guys
thank you,
all.
Jeanette.
Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. And if you guys want to do any more deep dives with us, check out avalonspirit.com. We have so much info on there. Lisa's on there. Elisa's on there as well. There's different courses and tons of stuff. So do check it out. Thank you guys again. And we will be back next week with more Spirit Coffee Talk.
Bye.